Hello guys, so today talk about Pokemon Scarlet Violet is the latest Beyblade game in the Pokemon series, and this is the fastest selling game on any Nintendo console. Of course, it's not the fastest selling game of all time. Of course, if you were around February of this year, Elden Ring was the fastest selling game of all time in all of history, and Pokemon Scarlet Violet again. These sales further proves that gaming doesn't really care about completing the games. Like people will still buy the games anyway. I have the game. If you watched on the second channel, you'll notice that the game has obvious frame rate issues. They have obvious rendering issues. I didn't count any of the infamous glitches, but again, Skyrim wants of all these infamous glitches as well, and Professor didn't give us one shit about it. They started caring like after Fallout 76 release, but you really have to go out of your way to get to the glitches, as well in the game. Like some of the glitches you have to really go out of your way to get them, and Pokemon Scarlet Violet has sold 10 million copies in its first 3 days, which means the game has already probably made back whatever budget this game has as well, and it has sold 10 million copies in its first 10 days. Okay, which that's insane amount of copies. 10 million copies includes physical and digital copies, of course. And also in Japan. Okay. And people say, but it's too much for the Switch to handle. Which I get, the Switch is not a strong console, but this is the same console that can run games like Breath of the Wild and My Odyssey to, very ease. Okay. And maybe, but Japan, okay, in Japan, which says sold is the biggest launch for a video game in Japan. Yep. Pokemon Scarlet Violet is the biggest launch. Of course, this is excluding. Of course, this is include both digital and physical sales. Obviously, the game sold 2.8 million physical copies, which means around 1.2 million people bought the games digitally, which means there was a growing market for digital games, as well as it's Japan's second best-selling game behind Splatoon 3, which means in Japan, Nintendo is still the kings, okay, and if Elden Ring, if a game like, if the Nintendo Switch was as powerful as other consoles, Elden Ring would have been one of the fastest selling games in Japanese history because it's on Nintendo. Okay, PS5 isn't really selling too high. I get Sony fanboys can be angry all they want about this, but no one is buying the PS5 in Japan. Okay, the PS5 is, yes, it sold 2 million copies in Japan, but no one is buying the PS5. No one cares about the PlayStation. Okay, no one cares about the PlayStation so much. The fact that they're still playing games on the PS4 when they should be making games exclusive to the PS5. But games like God of War Ragnarok are not really selling too well compared to Pokemon. Okay, and also there's another game called Mobius, whatever it's called. Again, and Sonic Frontiers also dropped as well. But the PS5 isn't selling as well as even the standard model, the old standard model of the Switch. Okay, yes, I think Nintendo seriously needs to consider making stronger hardware so they can. So again, if Nintendo had stronger hardware, they would be able to destroy Sony. Absolutely, like it is already a bloodbath for Sony versus Nintendo. But if Nintendo had all the big third-party games like Elden Ring and stuff. I don't give a shit about those AAA garbage that Nintendo releasing, okay? The fact that the Switch is selling so well without AAA garbage is just so hilarious. The fact that AAA games, like the biggest criticism for the Wii U is the fact that, it was an unattractive console for AAA developers. And that's the reason why it flopped. Also, the advertising sucked as well. But the main reason is, the AAA, third-party games were on the console, so it was a failure because of that. But again, the the Switch still has Japanese developers who are still willing to develop for the console. Indie, of course, Switch is probably like the best console for indie game developers because Nintendo is the least restrictive for indie game developers as well. Indie games sell the most on the Switch, and platformer games sell the most on the Switch as well. Like Sonic Frontiers is the best selling version. The best selling version of Sonic Frontiers is technically considered the worst version then versus the Switch version, because of course it's the in terms of graphically it's the worst version of them all, but it's gonna be the best selling version of the game. Okay, same thing with Sonic, even like Sonic Forces, the best selling version of Sonic Forces was the Switch version. Then, okay, but the around 1.5 million sales were digital copies as well, which also further has a proof that a lot of people are still, sadly, unfortunately, moving away from physical copies and moving towards digital games as well. You know, even in Nintendo games, they're still moving away from physical games to digital games. But yeah, this is at least very good for Nintendo. And then we also have this one. Nintendo supports us. They have received no complaints of Pokemon Scarlet Violet performance is no flats as planned. Unless it's like, some, joke article, like is Nintendo really that blind to, of course, all the videos, like about Pokemon Scarlet Violet's videos, all the TikTok and YouTube videos, and even Twitter videos, obviously, about Pokemon Scarlet Violet glitches, and even all the critics, the most trustworthy people on the planet, obviously, are even saying that, yeah, Pokemon Scarlet Violet have performance issues and performance problems as the game. The game, I think the game was kind of rushed out because, again, yeah, Pokemon Legends Arceus was performed relatively well on the Switch, and yeah, Pokemon Scarlet Violet. I think it's not because of the Switch console itself. I think it's because the game was rushed out. The game was rushed out because, of course, they're developing two games at once. Of course, you can reuse the models from last game, but you're trying again. It's Game Freak's second attempt at making it. First attempt at making a truly open world game. Sonic Frontiers was also an open world game, but that's not made by Game Freak. But again, it's the first attempt at making an open world game that also developing Legends Arceus. No, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Sun and Pearl developed by a third party developer. I'm sorry to tell you that game doesn't really count. And also, they were making the Sword and Shield DLCs a year before that in 2020. He also had the whole COVID stuff as well, which probably impacted both Legends Arceus and Pokemon Scarlet Violet's development significantly. And I think that Nintendo should seriously consider making a patch for the game, or at least consider trying to fix the performance issues on the Switch. Because the games like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, and of course Sonic Frontiers could work perfectly fine the Switch. And yeah, I'm not saying that Sonic Frontiers is a perfect game, but games like Xenoblade 3, Sonic Frontiers, and obviously, Zelda Breath of the Wild, I think games, that Pokemon Scarlet Violet should be compared to on the Switch because they're all open world games. And of course, Xenoblade 3 is an RPG, so yeah, that's another game you can compare it to as well. Not, some, really bad, games, not some other games, like, like they're comparing it to, we're comparing it to, some, Yokai Watch, so the game like nobody plays or something like that. No, I don't know if it's a Yokai Watch, I think it's some other game, like comparing it to like PS5 games, like, the Switch is not doing as well, it don't look as good as PS5, but maybe I think even the critics are starting to realize that the graphics may actually matter, and we need to give up this whole graphics don't matter thing. Really is to defend indie games. It's really to defend indie developers and indie games because indie developers and indie games, of course, don't have the resources to make 5K graphical games with cinematic cutscenes everywhere. Okay, they don't have the same development. I think that's the whole world. The whole graphics don't matter. We defend games like Undertale, Minecraft, Terraria, and obviously older games as well, because of course those consoles didn't have the graphical capabilities to run 4K graphics, obviously, to defend Atari, because older people use that to defend older games, Atari and stuff. Oh, why did the graphics look so bad? But you have blah 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 blah. To defend those, and of course to defend modern day indie games as well. Those are the typical uses. But most people are saying, yeah, maybe graphics may actually matter to newer AAA titles than we actually think, and they should actually release games that perform and run good. Maybe we can finally have a conversation about graphics actually do matter in a game, and you know we should really try to make the games as run and perform as best as possible on the hardware instead of saying, oh, but instead of putting our heads in the sand saying that graphics don't matter and gameplay matters more than graphics, even though poor performance of a game, poor graphical performance does actually impact, and glitches and stuff do actually impact the gameplay. So graphics in the turn do impact gameplay if your game is running poorly on hardware as well. So yeah, that's basically what this video here. Goodbye.